I am Brad Keelor. He is Rodolfo Sancio. Next on Director's Cut, find out what the term ice scour means and where you might have to go to see it. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, every 7 days, 168 hours, you could set your watch by it. I sit down with a different GI member who tells us all kinds of stories about themselves. Some of them are personal, some are professional, but all of them are always fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, you can hop over, nice Easter reference there, to geoinstitute.org and find out a little more. We are a technical society. We have about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists. We are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. If you like what you see today, and I think you're going to, you should do these two things in this order. You should click subscribe. You should click get notifications. We will let you know every single time we post something to the YouTube channel. Later this summer, we have an amazing conference coming up on offshore geotechnics, and we are very happy this week to have one of our committee members with us. It is Rodolfo Sancio from Geosyntec. He is in South Texas somewhere. I won't say Houston because it might not exactly be Houston, but he is somewhere around Houston. Rodolfo, are you ready for this?
I think I am.
Everybody thinks they're ready for Director's Cut, and everybody is always ready for Director's Cut. So there's really no there's no punchline there. We have 10 questions, the same as we do for everybody every week, and 2 of them are, of course, the same. And we lead off with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Talk running. So I think I do a little bit of everything here at Geosyntec. Brad, I do technical work, and I really enjoy doing that. And that is primarily setting the direction of a project, the vision of a project, how we were going to execute the resolution of a problem that one of our customers may have. Not so much every aspect of it, but setting the team together and putting them on the right path. And of course, reviewing their work and making sure that there has been a peer review process and a senior review process for everything that is put out to a customer. I also manage a branch. I've grown our group to about 25 geoprofessionals here, and we work at trying to keep everyone busy, happy, and continuously growing and expanding so that we can get those projects that everyone wants to work on. I'm also involved on business development and marketing of our services to new and existing customers, and of course have to continuously go out and recruit people at the senior level as well as at the junior entry and mid-career levels of the company.
I'm really, really happy that you included managing the branch and you included the HR responsibilities and stuff like that, because most people don't do that when I ask them that question. They just talk about their technical expertise or the research they're doing, and they kind of leave it at that. I am positive we have many multifaceted individuals within GI, but Rodolfo, you're one of the first to come on Director's Cut and say that you are actually that way. So a gold star for you, sir. We'll see how you do with the other 9 questions. We have to get into the fun stuff too on Director's Cut. That's one of our missions here. And so we start right away with that. What is the strangest item that you keep in your car?
That's a tough question. I drive a relatively small car, and I try to keep it tidy. And it's small for Texas standards, right? I mean, here everybody has a Jeep or a truck. So I looking into it, think the strangest item I may carry there is a whistle, right? I used to be a soccer coach for about 5 years, and so the whistle was handy to just pull it out and be able to do my job there. And I think it may come handy if I ever come to a busy intersection where the traffic lights are out and have to control traffic. It may be a good reason to have a whistle in the car.
I mean, it sounds kind of like you forgot that was there. So I hope you haven't been in that situation. Now, I do have to ask a follow-up on this one. I coached my son's basketball team for several years, and so I am the proud owner of a couple of whistles myself. Plastic or metal?
Metal.
Was that a conscious choice? I mean, soccer, you're outside. It gets cold, right?
Was that or not? I think it might have been. It might have been looking at the two plastic and metal options and saying, oh, metal is shinier, gives you perhaps a better status, having something shiny around your neck.
That's a good call. Never thought about the authority aspect of it. I like that. So we always ask our guest a question about their research or their practice. And, when I started going through your bio and your CV, there was a term that jumped out at me and screamed and begged to be asked about, and that is ice scour. This is fascinating to me. I didn't really know anything about it until I started doing the research for this show. Tell the people, what is ice scour? Where do you see it? And where have you seen it?
Well, let's see how we can talk about that. Ice forms and where it's cold, and so when you typically see an iceberg or an ice flow, you're going to see its upper portion, we call the sail, and beneath the water line, you're not going to see, but there is a larger portion of that iceberg ice flow called a keel. And when these icebergs, ice flows are moving, wind blows and pushes them and the currents. And when they get closer to shallow water, they may run aground. And they're going to continue to move and scour the seafloor, right? And so that indentation on the seafloor is the ice scour. Now, what happens? Why is that? Why do we care about that? And the point is that many offshore facilities have to run, and particularly in cold environments, have to run their pipelines, their cables to shore, right? Their product, they have to sell their product and put it to shore. And therefore, the question is, do we put the pipeline directly in the seafloor? And if you do, well, it's going to be dragged by the ice keel. So, okay, let's bury it. Well, how deep do we need to bury it? And then it's, well, as deep as the deepest gouge that's going to happen. Well, how deep is the deepest gouge, right? Well, then you start talking about return periods, the 100-year gouge or the 500-year gouge and so on and so forth. And you start talking to ice engineers who can develop that for you. And of course, like anything we do, we look at seafloor morphology and measure what kind of gouge depths we get. But say you bury the pipeline deeper than the deepest gouge of your design criteria, you're still going to have the issue that as ice is moving and creating that gouge, the soil below that level is still moving. And those deformations can still have an impact on the integrity of a pipeline or a cable. So you have to come up with, as a geotechnical engineer, recommendations for how much deformation will occur so that pipeline engineers can impose that on their pipeline integrity analysis and see what's going to happen to the pipeline. And so I did a lot of closed form solutions, numerical analysis, and participated and led 2 large-scale programs to evaluate the effects, measure the effects of ice gouging on buried structures.
I know you mentioned when we were talking before the interview that there are ice flows as far south as St. John's in Newfoundland, which all of our viewers are saying, dude, That's not south at all, which I get that, but it is pretty far south when you think about the flow of icebergs and stuff in the ocean. Where are the big areas that are going to be susceptible to ice scour other than the obvious ones? I said the North Slope, but there must be a bunch of others.
Yes. Well, there is the North Caspian Sea, right? And the latitude of North Caspian Sea is not too far north.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the North Caspian Sea, there's a big oil field called Kashagan, and that had pipelines running to shore and had to be designed against ice scour. And that's where a lot of the funding came from to be able to run some of the large scale tests that we did.
That is amazing. I am so glad I spotted that in your bio, because I'm fascinated by ice scour now.
I got to tell you about the large scale test we did in here in South Texas. We got this D11, right? The biggest caterpillar dozer you can find in the world. Build 2 keels. One was 56 tons. The other one was 45 tons. These were steel and concrete. We put a yoke on them and pulled them over compacted beds of sand and clay, and measured stuff, right? And so it was playing with soil at a large scale, and it was perhaps the most interesting, fascinating, time-consuming, and life-threatening project that I had practiced in.
So how do you mentioned you did that on a ranch. How do you start that process? Is it literally just finding out who the landowner is, calling them up and saying, can we rip up a couple acres of your land in order to do this?
Like most things these days, it starts with a Google search. And it started with where can I find a D11? And in Texas, right? And of course, we don't have access to ice here in Texas than in our drinks. So I Googled up where can I find a D11, and then found one. I called this person up and I said, hey, I want you to borrow your D11, and this is what I want to do. And he said, well, I got a cattle ranch, and I also have a yard where I fabricate stuff, and I'll be the guy that will take care of all your needs for your project. That was perfect. And it just happened to be a 2-hour drive from here, just south of Victoria, closer to Goliad, Texas.
That is very cool and sounds a lot simpler than I would think it would be. So that is great. I'm glad I saw that in there, because that was a good answer. I like that a lot. So we have to get back to the fun stuff now. And, sometimes I'm getting ready to go to bed at 2 a.m. or whenever it is, and I think this would be an amazing director's cut question, and that's the case with this one. What is the longest distance in your life that you've ever walked?
I'm not sure that I measured it, and now we're all connected, and we got these devices that tell us how much steps we walked from here to the kitchen to get some coffee. But when I travel, I like to walk the city, and I would walk all day. So I've walked DC, New York, cities in Europe, and so on, all day long, and end up with pretty sore legs. But I think the longest walk was back in 1991, when we hiked in southeastern Venezuela. We hiked to the top of Cucanan Tepuy. Tepuy is this tabletop formation with vertical walls, and we hiked that up, parked the car somewhere far, and for about 5 days went up and back down that Tepuy.
Hard-hitting journalistic follow-up here. Do you want to share with the people how you remembered that it was 1991 when you made this walk?
Well, it's interesting that you caught that. I was thinking, when was this? And by association, right? You think, oh, what music was playing in my head? And maybe I can look it up that way. And so when I'm Too Sexy is Playing on Your Head by Right Said Fred. That's 1991 hit. So it was 1991.
So we're going all over the place in Director's Cut today, and that is definitely the first time that I'm Too Sexy has been mentioned on Director's Cut. I don't know about other ASCE media properties. They may have covered that already somewhere else. So we're going to ask you to think back, maybe to college, maybe even before that. I think there are a couple of good questions here. Originally, I was going to ask you what non-engineering course in college was the most memorable for you. I think this is a good place to explain. You went to college in Venezuela. A lot of us in the States had to take, 15 courses outside of our major in undergrad. It doesn't sound like you really had to do that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we had a 5-year college program, a university program for engineering, and the first 2 years are called basic coursework, and it's all the calculus, all the mechanics, and it's actually in the university I went to. It's also described as a filter. So you start with about 2,000 colleagues, and you end up with a graduating class of 15. So they're all squeezed out of the program in those first 2 years, and the joke is that the business college graduates most engineers, and so we had all sorts of then after you go through that, it's all a focus on engineering courses, and I saw probably 7 water courses and 5 concrete and steel design courses and 2 soil mechanics and lab plus 2 labs plus foundations, pavements, dam design. So it was engineering all the way. There wasn't a whole lot of non-engineering courses. I do remember one or other humanities, it was called, courses that I barely passed. So it was memorable because I barely passed those courses. The passing grade was 10, and I got a 10 out of 20.
It's all right. I mean, once you get past that, it really doesn't matter. It could have been a 19. It could have been a 14. Nobody is ever going to be any the wiser. So what professor, or to go back even farther than that, teacher was most impactful for you throughout your education?
Oh, that's a tough one. But I'm going to take the easy answer. My father. So my father was a geologist in his first degree, and then he had a master's in geotechnical engineering and a PhD in geotechnical engineering out of UC Berkeley as well. And so he was later a professor, and he was my undergraduate thesis advisor. Wow. And so I had to live through every time there was a new class, a new professor at college. I also bear his name. So Rodolfo Sancio. Oh, are you his son? Like, well, duh. Yes. So I had a bar that I had to meet, right, or exceed. And so every time I would come in and say, hey, I got this problem in class. How do I solve it? And he would not tell me how to solve it. He would pull a book out of his bookshelf and say, read, and then come back if you have any questions. So it was a need for research and self teaching, self-education that was impactful, right? And still today, I spend a lot of time researching, reading on my own, trying to solve problems, investigate, and trying to pass that along to the people who work with me as well.
So how challenging was that, though, to have him as a thesis advisor? I mean, I kind of had one assigned to me, and it was not someone I had for any other courses before that. We didn't really know anything about each other. What was the biggest benefit and the biggest, I guess, detriment to having your dad as your thesis advisor?
Well, the benefit, of course, is availability of your advisor, because we lived in the same place, and he also worked at home. So it was 24/7 access, if you will, to an advisor. And he was advisor beyond the technical stuff, right? So it was, I think, overall good, and of course, it adds that extra layer of making sure that you don't disappoint your advisor, but importantly, you don't disappoint your father.
That's great.
Didn't think about that. You can disappoint your advisor and never see him again.
Yeah, shout out Dr. Fritzler. I don't think he was particularly concerned, other than he enjoyed my thesis. I guess that was about it. So the other question we ask everybody when they come on Director's Cut is how did you first get involved in ASCE and GI?
Well, I think that I joined ASCE back when I was a grad student at Berkeley. As soon as I had first exposure to it, and becoming a student member is straightforward, easy, and relatively cheap when you're a student. And so the GI chapter of San Francisco had meetings at a restaurant called Spencer's in Berkeley, and I think there were monthly meetings. They would bring a presenter, and there was always a good topic. And so I would try to go as much as possible. And I think at the end, I even had a chance to give a presentation myself at one of those GI organized seminars. So that was my first encounter, and of course, conferences and the benefits that the ASCE and the GI has to offer. I think it's a great forum for folks like us to interface, meet each other, network.
Great, and San Francisco chapter is one of our largest. We hear only great things about them, and they've gotten a few shout outs on Director's Cut lately, so that's another feather in their cap there. So we mentioned already you're from Venezuela. You grew up there. You lived there all the way through undergrad, I think. Venezuela is a pretty interesting place, and I was curious, after somebody finds out that you're from Venezuela and wants to talk about it more, where do you take the conversation?
Well, I'm not sure if I take the conversation or they do, but it typically lands in about 3 or 4 topics, right? One of them is the oil wealth, or may I say squandered oil wealth that Venezuela has, and its geopolitics. And that has a fascinating days-long conversation. The second one could be Venezuelan baseball players, and I hope everybody's paying attention. By the time this comes out, hope that Miguel Cabrera, the only Triple Crown winner in the last 50 years or so, will hit his 3,000 hit.
Maybe 500th home run too. That would be
maybe as well. The other topic may be Venezuela's beauty queens, and you'd be surprised and that's what taxi drivers that I've had conversations with tend to remember some years ago. And the fourth topic may be unfortunately the Venezuelan politics and sham socialism, should I say?
So we'll avoid that one for now. We could talk about that for hours, and we'll just go back to baseball. I mean, I always found it interesting that baseball is such a big deal in Venezuela, because for most of the rest of the continent of South America, it is not. I mean, how did that happen? And what do you remember about baseball growing up? Who were your favorite players, and what's your biggest Venezuelan baseball moment?
Well, the aspect of why does Venezuela has such a baseball culture as opposed to the rest of South America being prevalently soccer or football is related to oil, right? It's the American oil workers when that came to Venezuela to help Venezuela develop that industry that brought with them the need to play baseball. So that's how Venezuela grew their baseball prowess. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was baseball players like Omar Vizquel, multiple Golden Glove winner, and was really robbed a chance to end up in the Hall of Fame. Andres Galarraga, the big cat. So there was a team called the Caracas Lions, and that was my team, and I would go watch them when I could. And they both played there. Several of those, and I can keep on naming names that have played in the U.S. as well. Magli Ordonez, of course, is one that comes to mind. And right now I'm grasping at straws, perhaps under pressure of camera.
Don't worry. What's your favorite moment, either in Venezuelan baseball or by a Venezuelan in the major leagues?
Oh, I'm not going to go too far back, and I'm just going to say American League Championship Series. Jose Altuve hits the walk-off home run against Adolis Chapman of the New York Yankees and sends the Houston Astros to the World Series. Go Jose Altuve.
That's a pretty solid one, and I shared with you mine earlier. It was 2006. Magli Ordonez hitting the home run to send the Tigers to the World Series. They went worst to first from 05 to 06. It was a big deal for people from Michigan. That was very exciting that they were back. And yes, we all hope that Cabrera has his 3,000th hit and his 500th home run by the time this airs. Feels like it's been a watch for a while, but it's very exciting times for Detroit baseball fans. So you have a DGE. For the people who are not in the know, that is a Diplomate geotechnical engineering bestowed upon you by the Association for Geoprofessionals, which is the Academy for Geoprofessionals, one of the academies that ASCE operates. Why did you do it? What is your 30-second ad for AGP? Why should people become a DGE in your opinion?
Well, I sell my services as a subject matter expert, and I work every day to understand every problem that I tackle, and to be able to solve every problem that my client may call me with. And having certifications to prove that subject matter expertise is important to me, and the DGE is one of them. And so I obtained it at the first opportunity I had. One of the conditions is having had a PE license for 10 years. And so I obtained that DGE as soon as I could afterwards. And I really recommend it because it's not just this network or academy of gray-haired professionals. It really is, from my point of view, a opportunity to certify yourself as an expert in geotechnical engineering.
A fantastic, concise way, and you can find out more at geoinstitute.org or by contacting us. We would love to help you through the AGP application process. It's pretty easy. I think Rodolfo should nod right now to confirm that it is very easy. We have 2 questions left. We're getting down to the end here. One fun one, and then we're going to talk about ISFOG a little bit, which is also fun. So what is the largest DIY or home improvement project you've ever tackled on your own?
You know, one of the things that my father really taught us was to fix things right on our own and be handy and use tools and the right tool for the problem. So I love fixing things, DIY projects, and helping others fix their things as well. I think the largest I took on my own was changing some tile in a bathroom in our first home. Painting is something also I've done. And that first home, when we walked in, had the worst colors ever. Some bright yellows, some pea greens. And I'm sorry if your house is a bright yellow and pea green, but mine is not going to be. So it required layers and layers of base and white paint to cover that. And that house was a loft, and it had 3 stories, and one of the social area was a double height wall. So it required these extensions on the rollers, and it was a workout for sure. I was sore for days painting that house. But there's a lot of other DIYs that I do and really enjoy. But of course, I find myself with less and less time to do these things lately.
Yeah. So was that your first tile job? And if it was, what did you learn from it? Because I feel like everybody takes something away from that first tile project.
I think using the right grout is important. Using a grout that will stick, right, was quite important at the time.
That's a good lesson for everybody. And you learn all these amazing terms like lippage. I never knew what that was. And then I was like, oh, it's the difference in the height between the tiles, and you better not have any or anything like that. It's and now, the house was sold and the new owner is happily living there, I'm sure. So you look
Right.
back on it fondly. No
Exactly.
concerns. We mentioned at the top of the show that Rodolfo's on our committee, our program committee for the International Symposium on Frontiers and Offshore Geotechnics, which we are going to be holding in Austin in August. We are really excited about this. It's been delayed 2 times because of COVID, and we're pretty sure that it's actually going to happen this time. Oh, so the question I want to ask you is, what makes this such a unique conference, and why should GI members be interested in it, and why should they go? Why should they make the trip?
Well, I can go on for a while on this one, so let's see how much time you allow me. But offshore geotechnics and really offshore is water deeper than, say, about 100 meters is just fascinating practice area for me, right? I can, it can be stratigraphically very simple, but very complicated from a site characterization point of view, right? We seldom have the opportunity to prepare the site like we do on shore, where you take out all the vegetation, take off all the topsoil, prepare, compact. There's no opportunity to do that in most offshore projects. You're going to put many times some structures directly on the seafloor, and you're dealing with very soft soils and dealing with soil mechanics at very low stresses. And so it is interesting, simple but interesting as well. What I like also is that typically, given the size and complexity of projects, there is an emphasis on characterization, and the right amount of money is typically spent on characterization programs. So living in Houston, I've had the opportunity to attend many offshore technology conferences because I don't have to travel too much. And each one of them, I just couldn't get enough of the geotechnical sessions or geoscience sessions that were in these conferences. And so in 2010, I had the first opportunity to attend ISFOG in Perth. And I found myself in a forum where it was several days of emphasis on new developments in offshore geotechnics. And it was the best academicians, researchers, practitioners of the world speaking and sharing and networking at this conference. 2015 came around, and I had the opportunity to go to Oslo and actually present at Oslo and have the same experiences. And so when in Oslo it was announced that 2020 would be in Austin, I jumped and reached out to Bob Gilbert and Philippe Jean-Jean, the co-chairs, and asked them, hey, if you need any help for ISFOG 2020 in Austin, now in 2022, I'd be happy to help. And so I'm very glad and grateful that they were able to carve out a small job for me to do.
Well, we've loved having you on the committee. It's been a lot of fun planning this conference, even though it's been about twice as long as it usually is from start to finish. I think we had our first meeting maybe in 2017 to start talking about it, and here we are 5 years later. And like I said, it looks like it's actually going to happen. So for all our viewers, we hope you join us out there in Austin at the end of August. You can go to isfog2020.org and find out more information. Registration is open. There are exhibit and sponsor opportunities. We would absolutely love to have you there with us. So Rodolfo, you got more.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to emphasize that ISFOG is traditionally overseas. And this is the opportunity for the US-based practitioners to make a short trip to Austin, a fascinating city, a fun city, and attend the ISFOG there.
a great addition to the message there. You made it through all 10 questions today on Director's Cut, which, you know, I always say everybody makes it through, but it's still an accomplishment. If you liked what you saw today, viewers, and you probably did because you're here at the end, again, click subscribe, click get notifications. We'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channels, which is very, very frequently. So, Rodolfo, thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
I hope it was fun, and for our viewers, I hope it was fun, and we will see you with a brand new Director's Cut next week. That's even cool. I see, and you gave me a great idea. We should do a show like every month called the Scour Hour. And we should just have somebody on to just riff on it. Because like some of our experts have been to some crazy places too because of this. Ming Xiao from Penn State has spent all kinds of time like in super northern Canada. I'm talking like 75 degrees north, like not places I would ever want to hang out willingly.
Yeah.
Oh, we could that would be fun. We could either do Scour Hour or Hour of Scour. I don't know which one's better, but that'd be a good show.